Chapter 3. Welcome to the Rock. Alcatraz opened for business as a federal prison in July 1934. After a boat arrived, men were unloaded onto the dock. Here, armed guards lined them up and then marched them, and still cuffed and shackled, up a long hill toward the cell house. Families of the officers who worked on the Rock watched from their apartment windows which overlooked the dock. When the prisoners arrived at the cell house, they were led into the basement. Their cuffs and leg irons were removed. They were each photographed and given an inmate number. Then there was a medical exam. After showering, the new inmates received their uniform: blue button-up shirt, blue and white pants, belt, socks, shoes. They also got a cap, a wool coat, and a raincoat for the cold and wet days ahead. Carrying their clothes, the men were now taken, still naked, to their cells. Each inmate had his own cell. The small living space measured 9 feet long by 5 feet wide. The ceiling was 7 feet high. There was room for only a single cot, a small work table, shelf, toilet, and sink. The mattress was just 5 inches thick. But the men would have to get used to it. They spent at least 14 hours a day in their cells. Inmates who didn't get jobs, however, could expect to be in the cells 23 hours a day. Cell house tour. The cell house at Alcatraz contained 4 blocks of cells. Each cell block contained 2 rows and 3 levels of cells. Long corridors separated the cell blocks. The inmates nicknamed some of these walkways after famous streets and landmarks in New York City. Broadway, which separated B block from C block, led to Times Square, where a clock hung on the wall above the dining hall entrance. CD Street, or CD, separated C block from D block. CD Street ended at a doorway that opened onto the yard. A library that contained more than 10,000 books and magazines sat in the corner of the cell house. Its high ceilings let in lots of sunlight. The row of cells with a view of the library was considered the nicest in Alcatraz. Their address was Park Avenue. A booklet awaited every new prisoner in their cells. It listed all the rules, everything from when to wake up, eat, and work, to the number of library books you could keep in your cell. The rules were to be followed to the letter, or the inmate would be punished. The worst troublemakers were sent to the dungeons. That was the nickname given to the cold, damp, pitch-black cells beneath A and D blocks. The dungeons had no pillows, bedding, sinks, or toilets. A dungeon inmate ate a diet of mostly bread and water. He slept on the cold cement floor. There were stories of men who had to stand, handcuffed to the bars, for hours on end. Warden Johnston shut down the dungeons in 1938. From then on, D block became the new cell block for extra punishment, such as solitary confinement. That is when prisoners are kept alone, away from other prisoners. Men sent to D block to do time in solitary couldn't eat with the rest of the prisoners. Their meals were brought to them. They were allowed just 1 visit to the yard and 2 showers per week. The rest of their time was spent in a cell. The best views of San Francisco could be seen from D block. Some considered this an extra form of punishment. It showed them what they were missing. Sometimes the prisoners could hear laughter coming from the sightseeing boats that sailed past the island. 5 cells on the first floor of D block, known as the hole, could be used for even more serious punishment. The cells in the hole had 2 doors. The first was made of bars, and the second was solid steel. When the steel door was shut, the hole was plunged into total darkness. There was a sink and toilet, and a single dim light bulb that could be turned on only by the guards. There was a thin mattress to sleep on, but it was taken away during the day. Inmates usually got locked up in the hold for a day or two, but if they misbehaved, they could be held for up to 19 days straight. The strip cell was the worst and most feared form of punishment. Inmates were kept naked for up to 2 days at a time. Unlike the cells in the hole, this cell had no light bulb, toilet, or sink. To relieve himself, the prisoner used a hole in the ground. Inmates feared the hole in the strip cell. Sitting cold and alone in the dark for days was a terrifying punishment. It messed with people's minds. The best way to avoid doing time in D block was to always follow the rules. Haunted Alcatraz. To this day, some people believe that the ghosts of former prisoners haunt Alcatraz. Some night watchmen say they hear slamming doors and footsteps, but they never see anyone. Once, while giving a tour of the prison, Warden Johnston was said to have heard sobbing from inside the dungeon walls, but no one was in there. Cell 14D, the infamous hole, is said to be always colder than the other D block cells, even when the weather is warm. Stories have been told of a prisoner locked in 14D who screamed all night long. He said that a creature with glowing red eyes was trying to kill him. The next morning, he was found dead. Most people working at Alcatraz today insist there is no such thing as ghosts at Alcatraz. All these bizarre incidents, they say, have a logical explanation, or are just stories made up to scare people. But still, the legends remain.